Hello, so let us look at a few questions regarding Algebra 2 and then trigonometry. So here first we need to determine the number of possible triangles and find the measures of each case. Now, so we're going to be using the law of sine to figure this one out. In case of number 9, notice that line segment AB is opposite of angle C. So we can write it as 14 over sine of 75 has to be equal to 21 over x. Now here you can figure out the x by cross multiplication. We're going to get 14x is equal to 21 sine of 75 degrees, where x becomes 21 sine of 75 over 14. Let's put that into a calculator and see what happens. Right over here, 21 times sine of 75 divided by 14. And I just want to make sure that it will be in the degree mode here. Okay, that's good. Now then this becomes 1.44, but you will realize that this x has to be equal to this is equal to sine of an angle. Sine of an angle cannot be this high value, so therefore it's not possible. The values that we are looking at here has to be around between 1 and -1. But when it's over than that, then we cannot have the sine values that are greater than 1. Therefore, there is no triangles. 0. Now, then let's look at the second case. Same way as before. Angle B is opposite of this side. So here we have 12 radical 2 over sine of 135. Now, that has to be equal to 12 over x, or sine of x, it doesn't matter. Let me call it sine of x. When we cross multiply, you get to realize that, but in fact, in this case, sine of 135 is rather a nice number, which is 12 radical 2 divided by radical 2 over 2. That's equal to 12 over sine of x. So when you cross multiply, then we get to realize 12 radical 2 sine of x must be equal to 6 radical 2. By bringing things over, we get to realize that sine of x has to be equal to 1/2. Now then, what's the measure of the angle x? X can be equal to 30 degrees or 150 degrees. Now, can we have 30-degree angle when another angle is 135? Yes, that's okay. How about 150? No, because they add up to be more than 180. So only one angle is possible. Now, Max has a triangular garden. He measures two sides of the garden, and the opposite angle opposite one of these sides. He said that the two sides measures 5 and 8, and then the angle opposite to 8 foot is 75 degrees. So 8 and 75. They're paired up. Can a garden exist? And we need to figure out the measurement of each garden. And okay, so let's try to look into this one. So we are looking at 8 over sine of 75 has to be equal to degrees here, 5 over sine of x. So let's try to look into this together. So we get to realize 8 sine of x must be equal to 5 sine of 75. Now by dividing it by 8, we get the sine of x is equal to 5 sine of 75 divided holding by 8. Let us put that into calculator. Five sine of 75 divide holding by 8. Then we get to have something like this. And when you do the arc sine to figure out the value of x alone, second sine of the answer, we get 37 point, and we want to put the I guess I'm trying to look for, they didn't say anything about the measure of the angle, or you know how we have to approximate it. So why don't we just call that as 37 degrees? Then x can be 37 degrees, or the other measure would have been, in this case, by the second quadrant angle, would have been 143 degrees. One of them is already 75, so 75 and 37, it gives us the room for the third angle. But 75 and 143 will not, it will be greater than 180 already to begin with, so this has to be rejected. Then, second angle will be equal to 135. I mean, 37 and 75. And then, so therefore, the triangle we are looking at will be so if this one is 8 and then this one is 5, we get to realize that that's equal to 37 degrees. The other one becomes 75 degrees. They add up to 112. So that makes the other angle here must be equal to 68 degrees. Those are the measures of all three angles. Now here, when two forces act on an object, the resultant force is given in this way. Alright. Now, what are we looking for? If the force of the 12 pounds and 18 pounds act at an angle of 75 degrees, what is the magnitude of the resultant? So that's what we're looking for. How do you see that? This is 18, then this also must be equal to 18. Since it's parallelogram, this is 75, which gives us this one to be 105 degrees. Then we know the length of two sides and angle between them. It will give us the way to figure out the opposite sides from that angle using the law of cosine. So we get to have x squared must be equal to 12 squared plus 18 squared minus 2 times 12, 18, and cosine of 105 degrees. That's all we have to do. Then, let's put that into a calculator. 12 squared plus 18 squared minus 2 times 12 times 18 times cosine of 105. Then it will give us this value. All we have to do is take the square root of it. Then x will be about 24.079, but nearest hundredth. So therefore, we are looking at 24.08. and then that would be the pounds. Becomes our answer. All right. Two lighthouses 12 miles apart along a straight shore. Ship is 15 miles from the one lighthouse and 20 miles from the other. Find the nearest degree, the measure of the angle between the line of the sight from the ship to each lighthouse. So I can just draw one line segment first along the straight shore. So ship is 15 miles from one side, and then 20 miles from the other. So we could call this one as 20. This is ship, lighthouse 1, and lighthouse 2. And these are 12 miles apart, 15 miles in this way. So here, that's the picture that which we are looking at. And then why don't we try to figure out the angle between the lines of the sight from the ship. So basically we try to figure out the measure of each angles here. Now, in this case, why don't we call this one as x first? Then we can figure this one out by using the law of cosine once again. 12 squared must be equal to 15 squared plus 20 squared minus 15 minus 2 times 15 times, let me just write this one up one more time, 2 times 15 times 20 times cosine of x. And we can figure out cosine of x here by simply 12 squared minus 15 squared minus 20 squared. Bring these two things out to the other side. Divide whole thing by negative 2, 15, 20. Then we have, first I'm going to put the parentheses, 12 squared minus 15 squared minus 20 squared, divide by the denominators begin to be negative 2 times 15 times 20. That's the value that we end up getting. We have to get the arc cosine of that, second cosine of the answer. Now, in this case, then we get to realize this one to be 37 degrees, let us say. Now, if that's 37 degrees, but we're going to use this value to calculate because we have to do the rounding at the end only. So let's figure out this angle. How can you figure out this angle? This angle is the opposite of 20. So, but given that we know the measure of the one angle already, what we can do is we can use the law of sine to figure this one out. So here we have 12 over sine of 36.71 is equal to 20 over sine of L1. Now then, let's try to figure this one out together. So sine of L1 must be 20 times sine of 36.71 over 12. Let's figure this portion. (20 times sine of 36.71 and divide entire thing by 12. That's the value that we end up getting actually, and then we're gonna go for arc sine. The measure of the angle becomes 85 degrees, so therefore this one has to be 85. Then this one is rather simple because L2 must be equal to 180 minus 37 minus 85. So 58 becomes our measure of the angle. Alright, let us move on to the next question. Find the area of the parallelogram. Two adjacent sides are 40 and 24. And then measure of the one angle is 30 degrees. So in fact, if I were to draw one picture, so this is kind of the picture which you can look at. So one side is 24, the other side is 40, and measure of the angle is 30 degrees right over here. How do you find the area? Area is simply this side times sine of the angle 30. So 24 times 40 times sine of 30 degrees. But we know the measure of the sine of 30, that's equal to 1/2. So this one end up being 24 times 40 times 1/2. Now then, this becomes simply 480. Becomes our answer. Alright, let's look into this one. Telephone pole on a hillside makes an angle of 78 degrees with the upward pole. So that's a 78 right here. A wire from the top of the pole to a point up the hill is 12 feet long. So this is 12 feet. And makes the angle 15 degrees with the pole. Find the nearest hundredth of the distance from the foot of the pole to the point in which the wire is fastened. So we're looking for this is x. And you can see that because you see the pair of the angle and then the side known to you, we can use the law of sines. So here we have to calculate A. We get to realize 12 over sine of 78 degrees is equal to x over sine of 15. So therefore x will be equal to, in this case, 12 sine of 15 over sine of 78. Then 12 sine of 15 divided by sine of 78. So the answer becomes this form. So put it to the nearest hundredth. So x will be equal to 3.18 becomes our answer. It's going to be feet. All right, let's look at part B. Use the answer from part A to find the nearest tenth, the height of the pole. So how was you able to find the height of the pole? So we 3.18. They want us to use this actual value, not the more accurate one, but this value. So the height of the pole, what do I call that as h? One thing which we get to realize is that since we know the two angles, then we can figure out the third angle. Here, third angle becomes sum of these two angles that we know becomes 93. So this one must be 87. Then using the law of cosine, we should be able to figure that out. H squared must be equal to 3.18 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 3.18 times 12 and times cosine of 87 degrees. Let's just make sure that that's the correct measure of the angle. Okay, that seems to be all correct. Now we just have to calculate this one then. What is h? So first, I'm going to call this one as 3.18 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 3.18 times 12 cosine of 87. And that's the h squared, so we have to get the square root of it. So 12.25, so it's the nearest tenth in this case, from 12.3. That becomes our answer. Alright, so let's look into this question. From a point on the ground 50 feet from the foot of the vertical monument, so we have something that's a vertical. So we have something that's 50 feet apart. Measure of the angle of elevation to the top of the monument is 65 degrees. So that's 65 degrees. What is the height of the monument to the nearest foot? So in this case, we can simply use the tangent. Tangent of 65 is equal to h over 50. Then h simply becomes 50 tangent of 65 degrees. So let's try to figure that out. 50 tangent of 65 degrees. That's equal to 107. So h will be 107 foot or feet. Alright, so we're going to finish up part 1 here, and then we're going to continue with part 2 later.